It's the ERP Confab. I'm David Essex, industry editor at TechTarget's ERP website. Hybrid ERP combines on-premises ERP for common business processes like accounting and HR with cloud applications, typically software as a service, for more specialized functions such as customer experience or field service management, or even a second ERP for a new subsidiary. Why deploy hybrid ERP, and what type of enterprise architecture do you need? To learn about the practical issues of hybrid ERP, I talked to Iain Saunderson, Chief Technology Officer of Spinnaker Support, a third-party provider of maintenance and managed services for SAP and Oracle ERP and databases and Salesforce CRM. We also talked about how hybrid ERP can extend the life of on-premises ERP amid pressure from vendors to move to full SaaS, and what he's hearing from Spinnaker customers. Iain, I'm wondering if maybe we could start with you explaining what Spinnaker Support does, including what your primary business is in and maybe the different services you offer, who your customers are also.
Spinnaker Support is essentially a replacement option for vendor software support. That means a few different things, but essentially what Spinnaker does is we replace the vendor support stream. So, the traditional method of logging tickets with the vendor and getting support from the vendor switches to Spinnaker Support. We effectively replace that at a substantially reduced rate, but also at a much higher service level increase. So staffed with highly experienced engineers, 18, 20-year plus veterans who are really domain experts in their areas, answering questions as the first line of support, but also most importantly at a substantially reduced cost. Certainly there's a whole bunch of other areas and options we can go into, but that's the core of the service.
Mm-hmm.
Spinnaker also has a thriving managed services business, as well as a Salesforce business.
Mm-hmm.
So we do Salesforce consulting, we do Salesforce managed services.
Yep.
So all this together make us a pretty holistic IT services company.
What kinds of services and products do you offer expressly to help companies extend the life of their on-premises SAP and Oracle ERP systems and maybe put off moving their ERP to the cloud as long as possible?
Yeah, so with the challenge of moving to an additional a third-party support vendor, you're often faced with trying to extend the life of existing versions. So those versions, generally come with an end of life from the vendor. And the Spinnaker world, we want our customers to really extend that life as far as possible. So the challenges are usually around security, around interoperability, and tax and regulatory updates. Those three areas we have product portfolio solutions for that we can really kind of insert our products and our solutions to really extend the life. Security, we have a comprehensive security offering that really at least matches the vendor security level, in terms of just the risk profile that we're able to provide to our customers. Around interoperability, the challenges are often around interfaces, around just security standards, around compatibility with browsers, operating systems. In all those areas, we have products that can really connect and bridge those interoperability challenges. Quite often, the only reason a customer really goes to and stays with the vendor support is because they're going to continue to receive those compatibility updates. If those compatibility updates don't become a challenge anymore, they really have freedom to really express and stay on the versions they want to stay on, the versions that are stable, the versions that are working, the versions that have their customizations in. So meshing together those solutions with their versions allows them to really extend that for obviously not an infinite amount of time, but a substantially long amount of time. We have, as an example, we probably have customers running technology that's probably 30 years at the extreme, but not uncommon to be 15, 20 years.
Do some of these solutions that you're offering, I assume it goes beyond services like time of IT people and programmers and all that. And do you have actual extensions, what might be called extensions of ERP that you add on to?
So we really have across all our products, so across the security portfolio products, which we call Spinnaker Shield, across our interoperability products called Spinnaker Link, we have a combination of kind of service offerings as well as products. Not everything can be solved with a product, especially in the security space. it's great to have a product that you can slot in that will solve the problem. But quite often it's our engineers working with the customer on developing solutions and implementing our kind of documented approaches. We don't charge anything extra for these services. They're included as part of the service. You pay a fixed fee. Those services come with it. So it's, especially in the security space, it's tools, it's services, kind of the same with interoperability. We have a few developed products that have been developed in-house to bridge certain technologies and make them work together. But a lot of times it's a case of implementing a solution brief or getting one of our consultants to help you implement, a particular type of solution in your environment. So it's really a combination. It's a lot of services and a lot of products. On the tax and regulatory side, it's a lot of working with our customers with their customizations to keep their tax and regulatory legislative updates in place. That's normally, done on a bespoke basis where we log in and we develop those customizations for each and every customer in their ERP at no additional cost. It's included in the package bundle, and they get that as part of the service. So a complicated answer, but really multifaceted.
Do any of Spinnaker's customers, would you say that they have what you might call a hybrid ERP architecture?
Yeah, we do. I look at the world, certainly hybrid ERP, but in the bigger picture of ERP, definitely hybrid IT. We see hybrid IT and hybrid ERP everywhere now. It's in different forms. Some of it is infrastructure, some of it is platform, some of it is SaaS. But we see it at every customer, maybe by circumstance of acquisitions. Sometimes it's trying out sort of DevOps opportunities and a platform as a service solution like Amazon's RDS. So we see hybrid ERP, we see hybrid IT everywhere, pretty much all of our customers nowadays. There's really no customer that hasn't tapped into some form of cloud.
How would you define hybrid ERP, if it's possible to state it in a sentence or two?
A lot of different opinions. I mean, I look at really hybrid IT and hybrid ERP as kind of an aggregation of an on-premise solution with some sort of cloud solution. The cloud solution definition is pretty generic in nature. There's various types of cloud. People don't often, when they use the word cloud, go into those details. So hybrid cloud could be maybe platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, or software as a service, mesh with some sort of on-prem ERP system. It's kind of that meshing of a few different cloud versions.
Some people would include two-tier ERP, I think, under the hybrid ERP umbrella. And I know the phrase was popular a few years ago. I'm actually having a little trouble telling if that's really used in the industry or if that's a phrase that vendors use as a sort of a marketing term to maybe pitch one of their newer cloud-based products. SAP is a good example. All the major vendors have a variation, some kind of newer SaaS type product that can be added probably more quickly. Do you actually use the term, and do your customers use the term two-tier ERP?
Yeah, I've heard the term, but I've never heard a customer overtly use that term. To me, there's two forms of two-tier ERP. There's the, homogeneous, where you're running maybe two financial systems. You maybe an on-prem and maybe a cheaper cloud version, as well as just, two-tier in terms of, maybe a manufacturing system is in one area, and then an ERP is in a different tier. Not something we hear often. I mean, we do see it out of a lot of our larger clients, just by circumstance of M&A activity they've done, maybe done acquisitions, divisional ERP has been running for a while. And by just nature, they have that spread of various ERPs, maybe sitting at different levels, maybe a tier one ERP like an SAP or an EBS, and maybe a tier two system like a QuickBooks or something smaller. So you do get that hybrid combination just by the nature of business and just by the nature of the way the organization has changed.
So it's like a rose by any other name kind of situation. In other words, people do, but that's not what they call it.
Yeah, it's never by intentional design. I mean, certainly you do an acquisition, you hope to assume that control of that financial system. And by just the nature of budgets and timeframes, it gets left out and run as a separate separate organization. And it may come together over time, but it generally just lingers out there, and there's a consolidation process that brings everything together.
It's been apparent to me from watching what SAP has been doing with its newer products and the big push to go to the cloud. And I would say probably same thing with Oracle and Infor, mostly with SAP, though, I think more. Hybrid ERP might be a route, just a halfway house to eventual migration entirely to the cloud. First of all, is it that? And if so, can we talk a little bit about typically how people might use hybrid ERP, not as a long-term thing, but as a way to get to the cloud?
I speak to a lot of people about that very question. And, when you drill into specifics about what they want to achieve with cloud, there's a lot of ambiguity around what cloud means. I like to break up cloud into kind of three major areas, the infrastructure, the platform, and the software. And, when you drill into people's wants and desires and aims and objectives, they're not sure where they want to land up. They know they've got to get to some cloud at some point, because there's this push from investors, maybe the board around, get to the cloud. When you drill into what cloud success looks like, they don't always have a clear roadmap. So the opportunity exists for hybrid cloud. You can do it an easy way. Maybe take your existing ERP, your existing, SAP solution and move it into an infrastructure as a lift and shift type exercise. Or you can go, full hog and move to a completely new SaaS solution. My experience is what I'm seeing is a lot of people, when it's explained, prefer to go to the infrastructure solution as a first step. Take the investment, not lose the investment, but really take it, move it to an infrastructure platform, reap the benefits of going to the cloud, declare the cloud success, and then gradually look to move to a platform or software as a service in the years to come. Quite often people want to, bite off the whole big, SaaS journey in one big bite rather than doing it in incremental pieces. So we see a lot of move to infrastructure as a cloud, simply moving to a platform like Azure VM or AWS EC2 as an easy way to get cloud penetration, test it out, and then start growing from there. Maybe bolt on a SaaS solution onto that cloud, that legacy cloud product that's now hosted in the cloud, and then kind of grow from there. It's almost a hybrid cloud. You've got on-premise, and you maybe got a few different flavors of cloud, all with varying degrees of ease to achieve. You can still say that you've achieved something.
It has seemed like to me like it's been a bit of smoke and mirrors from the ERP vendors, not from folks like you necessarily, but from the ERP vendors about cloud, putting the term cloud on things. And often you find, it's still the on-premises system. It might be called private cloud. They might have just literally lifted and shifted to some more affordable cloud and still get some of the benefits like being able to dial capacity up and down, that kind of thing. Is it possible to name the type of cloud that you folks at Spinnaker are working the most with lately for your customers?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at a Gartner event about a month and a half ago and speaking to a lot of people coming up to the booth and asking us questions, and a lot of panic and seeking help on how to save their cloud migrations. Now, there's various forms of those. A lot of those references and questions we got asked were around maybe more SaaS-based solutions from traditional vendors. Not going into names, but maybe the products aren't as mature as maybe a Salesforce or a Workday, and struggles with those kinds of solutions. So certainly people are trying them. What we're seeing is, people moving more to the infrastructure type solution. On commodity clouds, we see a lot of AWS migrations, particularly EC2, some RDS. We see some Azure VMs, and certainly probably the equivalent of Google. Obviously, those three are probably the biggest public clouds that we see. Probably AWS kind of leads it, simply because EC2 has got such a low barrier to entry in terms of doing a successful lift and shift. There's a lot of engineering expertise out there. There's tons of partners out there. They have a great partner network. Spinnaker has certified engineers on those lift and shift exercises. It's an easily achievable win to get to an EC2 lift and shift cloud environment.
How do you help customers think through the cloud choice issue? I know that's a huge question, and maybe you spend half your time doing that. Like, private cloud, which public cloud, so-called hyperscaler to use or not use, all those kinds of things. There are a few rules of thumb or certain situations that lend themselves to one type of cloud versus the other.
Yeah, so certainly it's a road mapping exercise, understanding what they want to achieve. Is there a business problem they're trying to solve? Are they trying to just really, stick a stake in the ground, a flag to say they've achieved cloud success? Really understanding what the objectives are. Once you get the objectives, you can kind of build a proposal, kind of recommendation around, how to best proceed. Are we looking at a full-blown application migration to maybe, SAP to Workday or something as impactful and as significant as that? Or are you looking at a smaller lift and shift to, achieve cloud success? So trying to understand those objectives and breaking those down. So often when I speak to people, the focus is this: I need to get to the cloud. And, what does that mean? How do you gauge the cloud? Is it an on-prem cloud? Is it an infrastructure cloud? How do we measure that success? I think that's the first point in kind of really decomposing the problem. Once we understand what they're trying to do, looking at maybe existing in-house competencies to see, chances are they've probably been doing existing development in some cloud platform. There's a large portion of skunkworks projects we find around RDS and organizations that somebody's taken a credit card and has got 20 RDS environments installed in their infrastructure, and so they've got the skills. It's not just a recognized platform, but they can leverage those skills to then further their cloud journey. So I think just breaking it down, the biggest piece is understanding the success. The biggest feedback I would give anybody is break down what cloud means to you. It's a problem that we can very easily solve and walk through if you can quantify that problem.
Isn't part of the calculation that to truly go to SaaS, multi-tenant SaaS, like the new version of somebody's ERP, is the biggest change in terms of business processes? It just is a bigger decision in some ways, especially if they've been doing things a certain way for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, it's massive. There's going to be so many customizations in those legacy systems that probably aren't documented. They've got to be qualified. That functionality is probably not going to exist in the SaaS system. So that's a huge paradigm change, way of doing business, education change for users. It doesn't come easy. Looking at the more mature systems and moving edge systems to cloud first as a technique or approach that we've had success with. If your core business is not CRM, moving your CRM systems first potentially. If you're a heavily manufacturing-centric organization, moving your financials second as opposed to your manufacturing systems. Just getting the priorities so you leave the really important systems to last, and you sort of crash and burn on the less significant systems. Mm-hmm. We see a lot of customers doing that first. It's not take your most important system, your financial system, let's move that first. We also find just the functionality in a lot of legacy ERP vendors is just not there yet. There's a lot of work that's got to be done on the systems. We've seen people go to SaaS solutions and then come back from SaaS solutions. I was at Gartner a few weeks back speaking to a company that does a lot of manufacturing. They moved to a SaaS solution. They moved back to the on-premise solution. Luckily, they were running Oracle EBS. They had their existing manufacturing system already set up in the EBS system, in the financial system. So it was a fairly easy move back to the on-premise solution. But they thought they'd done their homework. They thought they'd done their due diligence. It just didn't work, and they had to go back. And they went back with Spinnaker Support, so they could have the advantage of third-party support. Didn't have to rely on that vendor roadmap around whether this system is supported or not supported. You then need to do upgrades. So they had some flexibility around that third-party support model in terms of moving back.
Yeah, for some reason, I'm laying on the sarcasm heavily. I haven't seen these moves back from the cloud back to on-premises heavily, shouted from the rooftops by the vendors. And I wonder how much it's going on, if it's fairly prevalent.
And it's interesting, we were shocked by the number of people who are coming up to our booth asking if we could help them with their kind of ERP implementations. We don't do that as our core line of business, but they've gone down a path of 6 months, 8 months to even, I heard, a year, where they're still trying to get this product implemented, and it's just cycling and cycling and cycling, and they can't get to closure. They need to make the tough decision, so that where they back it out and go back to their traditional ERP, the on-premise ERP, or they try and push through and just blow the budget.
Mhm.
It's not an easy decision, but we did see multiple companies coming to us and asking the question.
You've alluded to interoperability a few times. You've mentioned that there must be significant integration challenges, I would think, in setting up and maintaining hybrid ERP, especially. What are some of the most common integration challenges?
Yeah, so we really break kind of interoperability in four major categories. There's obviously the operating system interoperability challenges around, legacy operating systems, working with older versions of the software and vice versa. There's kind of interface challenges. So probably the most common recent one is the Office 365 enablement, where older legacy applications stop working with maybe modern cloud-based infrastructure like Office 365. So that's kind of an interface category. We see a lot of interfaces, so interfaces to banking around encryption standards. Certain banks are going to require more recent encryption standards. The application's only going to support older encryption standards. And then finally, around sort of desktop kind of issues. Desktop issues are a little bit of a bucket around those issues, but it includes browsers, it includes the desktop products like Excel, Word, it includes Java. Those challenges around making your existing front-end UI work with the applications. So we kind of group our interoperability products and portfolio into those four categories. Within those four categories, we have products, solution briefs, that solve the most common problems. They're always being added to. I'm on calls probably weekly with customers who are highlighting new problems or problems that we are, seeing on vendors' roadmaps that are going to be occurring in the next year, with maybe de-support notices from certain cloud vendors. As we see those initiatives and those challenges for our customers, we start a development cycle. We start looking at ways to approach those problems, whether we're going to develop a product, whether we're going to partner with a solution, or we're going to develop a kind of an in-house solution brief that we can publicize to our customers. All that comes as part of the service. There's no additional cost for our interoperability products. They're included as part of our service. We offer them as long as the customer is a Spinnaker customer. Mm-hmm. So it's a complicated landscape, but we kind of group it into one of those four buckets.
I see. Can you talk a little bit about what's in the solution brief? Is it literally a bunch of steps that they can follow themselves, or is there more to it than that?
No, exactly that. I mean, some of the solutions, some of the problems are fairly straightforward. That they're fairly iterative in how we solve them. But it may be going into the registry and adding, this parameter and tweaking this configuration in IE. That might be a solution brief. There's no point in writing a product or a script to do 2 or 3 steps. So we put in a nice, a readable document that we give to our customers. We have a support engineer log on, do a screen share, walk the customer through deploying the solution, and then be on call when the customer moves it to production and so forth. The more complicated solutions, we give the client software, we walk them through installing the software, and they get to use that software as long as they're a Spinnaker customer. Mm-hmm.
Do you see a scenario where a certain percentage, let's say in 10 years, a certain percentage of Spinnaker customers are just going to stay on hybrid ERP and never make the move to the cloud or push it off indefinitely?
Yeah, I mean, I see our larger customers are so invested in the on-prem infrastructure, on-prem custom systems, even the hybrid kind of configuration with maybe the hybrid ERP or hybrid IT alongside custom developed infrastructure, maybe in the banking space, in the telecommunication space. It's tough to break some of that apart. I think there'll always be, to some degree, an on-prem data center running some on-prem applications. Trying to decouple a 2,000 or 3,000 database landscape is incredibly complex. You're looking at 7, 10, 15-year projects. So I think there may be a shift in the industry from cloud to some other paradigm, whether it's an on-prem cloud or kind of more of a standardized hybrid cloud. But I think there's always going to be some sort of on-prem, especially with our larger enterprise customers. I think smaller customers will likely be able to make that cloud journey with a combination of maybe SaaS and infrastructure as a service products to be able to push that data center to the cloud. Spinnaker being a good example. We've been successful in using almost cloud only. Certain things we've had to bring in-house just by the nature of our growth in terms of our unique reporting requirements or maybe our data warehousing requirements. Don't necessarily fit into a cloud, based infrastructure. The same would apply to our customers. Short answer is, hybrid IT and hybrid ERP is here to probably stay for at least the next probably 15, 20 years.
Well, Iain, this has been interesting. I really appreciate your coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you, David. It was great having you. Look forward to talking further.